Okay, let's continue my thoughts on Immortality by Milan Kundera. After describing our efforts to achieve immortality through memory, Kundera implies we also try to achieve it through love, perhaps the only feeling that might seem immortal, and more precisely, it can be immortalized through literature. Rilke says of Bettina's love that it needs no reciprocity, it contains within itself both the challenge and the response. It answers its own prayer. A love that is planted in people's hearts by an angelic gardener needs no object, no response. And also, true love is incapable of infidelity. Such a love, unconcerned about reciprocity, looks for the beloved in every transformation. This is the kind of love everybody, or most people, are searching for, infinite, and because of it may be immortal. And maybe that's the only immortality we can achieve, in the feeling of eternal love. This kind of love is seemingly unconditional, self-sustained, something one can feel for God, or maternal love for a child. Maybe we need to understand love better, the feeling that is often confused with the object, and then it seems not to be love, but obsession, need to possess. Loving the whole world and everything in it might not seem such a crazy idea. It might be our individual jealousy that makes us look down on it. There is also the connection between love and suffering. Seems one cannot exist without the other, and no suffering unless one is able to feel love, and no love without suffering, because it is suffering that makes all the other feelings possible. The basis of the self is not thought, but suffering, which is the most fundamental of all feelings. Man shows his real self, who he is, only when suffering, so to know somebody, you need to see them when they are suffering. And the book reflects on relationships, implying they are a form of suffering, for men because, as the book says, men prefer to walk with a famous woman than have sex with her, because they prefer admiration over pleasure. So men who are happy in a relationship live in some kind of illusion. On the other hand, women seem to be losing all the illusions, and that's why Kundera says they are the future of the world. Woman is the future of men. Who actually said that? I forget. Lenin? Kennedy? No, it was some poet. Woman is the future of men. That means that the world, which was once formed in man's image, will now be transformed to the image of woman. Maybe for the first time, women are allowed to be themselves, no more illusions created for man's pleasure, and now we can see who they really are. And they might be responsible for our future, but the question is, what kind of future will it be? It has been extremely lucky that up to now, wars have been fought only by men. If they had been fought by women, they would have been so consistently cruel that today there wouldn't be a single human being left on the planet. They say hell has no fury like a woman scorned. An interesting part of the narration are the imaginary conversations between Goethe and Hemingway in the next world, experiencing immortality. Goethe has been already dead for over a century after Hemingway arrives, and Hemingway, is somewhat disappointed with the whole idea of immortality, since he thought he would be able to get away from life and just rest. He says his immortality are his books, and he wrote them in such a way that no word could be deleted, implying his legacy could not be distorted. Rest. He says his immortality are his books, and he wrote them in such a way that no word could be deleted, implying his legacy could not be distorted. Life and just rest. He says his immortality are his books, and he wrote them in such a way that no word could be deleted, implying his legacy and just rest. He says his immortality are his books, and he wrote them in such a way. He says his immortality are his books, and he wrote them in such a way that no word. He says his immortality are his books, and he wrote them in such a way that no word could be deleted, implying his legacy could not be distorted. Books are immortal in a certain sense, perhaps. He paused and then added softly, with great emphasis, but we aren't. He says, disappointed, that you can take your life, but you cannot free yourself of immortality, meaning you can get away from this world, but not yourself. It is true in our lives, we can get away from the world, places, and other people, but we cannot get away from ourselves. People often change their surroundings, but are surprised their life hasn't changed, because they haven't changed. Tolstoy said, everybody thinks about changing the world, but nobody thinks about changing themselves, because it is more difficult, and human nature is to look for the easiest way. But the change seems necessary for good immortality. Immortality means we will only be with ourselves for eternity. It relates to Nietzsche's theory of eternal return, which says our lives repeat infinitely the exact same way. So we better live the best life possible, because this will be our immortality. Returning to immortality through creation and Hemingway, he committed the suicide when he thought he was at the peak of his career, so he would seal his legacy at the best possible moment. But to his further disappointment, your control over how you are remembered is limited, and he is more remembered for who he was as a person, because it is the others who choose how to remember us. But Goethe tries to comfort him by saying that what happens in life back on Earth to them is irrelevant, because there they don't exist anymore. Forget for a moment that you are an American and exercise your brain. He who doesn't exist cannot be present. Is that so complicated? The instant I died, I vanished from everywhere, totally. I even vanished from my books. Those books exist in the world without me. Nobody will ever find me in them, because you cannot find someone who does not exist. The conversation is somewhat of a contradiction, because they do exist, but in immortality. So maybe Kundera is saying that our wonderings about immortality while we are alive are a waste of time, because there is no connection between the two states. And if there is immortality as continuation of our existence, it implies that we, as individuals, are part of something much bigger than our lives. And the book questions chance, coincidence, what is it, does it exist? And if we accept their existence, they, the individual coincidences, are not important in themselves, because something always happens. If not A, then B. And if something never happened, then it never existed, and it never had any impact on our life, not physical and not psychological. So the life is not a coincidence, and the search for immortality suggests that there is more planning and control to our existence. As a possible proof, Kundera analyzes accidental death. Was it really accidental if you look at all the little events and decisions that led to it? So there might be destiny, and if there is destiny, then there are things beyond our understanding. The part titled Dial describes life as a predictable process with unavoidable end, regardless of the decisions you make, thus somewhat negating coincidences. You will pass through different stages of life, regardless of what you do, how hard you try not to move on to the next stage. This part could have been a short novel in itself, even though it relates to the general plot. Kundera says it should have been titled The Unbearable Lightness of Being, but unfortunately he already used the title in his previous novel, which is his most famous work, but he admits that it came a bit short of what he intended. And that's why he probably decided to include this chapter, Dial, as a clarification, maybe even a rebuttal to some parts of his previous novel. The idea of the chapter is that we often look back on the things we have done and think we could have done it better. But it probably was the best we could have done at that time, and we cannot go back and do different, no makeovers. We can only do something new and hope it might have some impact on the mistakes of the past. To sum it up, Immortality is one of these books that make you think. It is dense and it creates a need to often stop and reflect on what is written. How does it apply to ourselves? It is not really plot or action driven, but rather exploration of individuals, their subconscious search for immortality, or maybe just acknowledging that immortality exists and wondering what it is. We know or feel it exists, but are frustrated by not being able to put our finger on it. It is part of our individual existential crisis. Immortality is more of a philosophical idea, and that's how Kundera approaches it. Most people agree that immortality exists as a relative concept. The problem is trying to prove it as some type of absolute idea, maybe because we live in a relative world, and absolute is just an illusion, a relative illusion. Does love for art really exist, and has it ever existed? Is it not a delusion? When Lenin proclaimed that he loved Beethoven's Appassionata above all else, what was it that he really loved? What did he hear? Music? Or a majestic noise which reminded him of the solemn strings in his soul, a longing for blood, brotherhood, executions, justice, and the absolute. So immortality is, in some way, our search for the absolute and trying to grasp its meaning. The book is a reflection on the human longing for permanence and the elusive nature of it. It is the instinctive human longing for more, a hopeful search. Kundera examines the ways in which we seek to transcend, maybe even conquer, our mortal existence. He uses love, art, or the quest for fame to make his case. He seems to try to show that our search for immortality is a silly concept, a byproduct of our physical existence, and only limited to humans. I read somewhere, maybe in this book, that animals never think about immortality, and this makes them immortal. So our search for immortality is maybe not counterproductive, but a waste of time. Because if immortality exists, then it is an absolute concept, and it doesn't relate to anything else. But on the other hand, there are so many ways to define it that it is pretty relative, so it only exists for us because we think about it. Yes, says Agnes. She knows that the gas has come from another distant planet, one with an important status in the universe, and she quickly adds with a shy smile, "Is life better over there?" The visitor only shrugs. Agnes, surely you know where you are living. Agnes says, perhaps that must exist, but was there no other way to arrange things? Is it really necessary for a person to leave a body behind, a body that must be buried in the ground or thrown into a fire? It is all so horrible. That's well known all over, that the earth is horrible, says the visitor. And another thing, says Agnes. Perhaps you will consider this question silly. Those who live in your place, do they have faces? No, faces exist nowhere else but here. Maybe the point is that our life on Earth is not incidental, but based on illusion, more psychological than physical, and maybe we don't need a physical body to exist. And going back to face, we identify people by their faces, and seems that they are nothing more than the face, and if that's the reason, we will not recognize them in the other worlds, because there are no faces. So the search for immortality is an individual and lone struggle. Maybe the concept of immortality in the book is just a satirical idea, and the real idea is the meaning of life, how we live it, what it can become, and how can we be remembered, and accepting how little control we have over it. The relativity of everything that happens, very similar to immortality. The disappointments, growing older and accepting that one day we will be gone. How the trajectory of our lives is determined by things and events out of our control. A lot of it somewhat incidental and seemingly meaningless, even suicide. And maybe believing in immortality, it makes it all, to us, seem predetermined, easier to accept. We are looking for something deeper because our basic human instincts, which seem to drive all our actions, are so cruel and selfish. Ultimately, the book is about dying, the unavoidable end to our physical existence, and how to accept it. We can become ready to die, and it can become a liberation, but only when we disconnect from earthly pleasures and everything becomes meaningless. Maybe we reach immortality when we learn to let things go. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback, which I transform into a hardcover, leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A, naturally tan hide I buy from a tanner in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First, I design the cover, and for this, I use an abstract painting of human figures, seemingly deformed, being here and somewhere else, maybe floating in their immortality. This is the back with the blurb, and inside the front cover I printed a quote from the book. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather-bound hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100, but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel. And for every 100 donations, I will make a lottery and draw one name, and the winner will receive the book. So if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing, when you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually, it has a very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So if you want one, don't snooze, or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here. And until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.